RPN, the Roddenberry Podcast Network.
This episode of Mission Log is sponsored by LinkedIn. Are you hiring? There's a good chance the person you're looking for is on LinkedIn. Go to linkedin.com/missionlog and get a $50 credit toward your first job post.
Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. Episode 283. If Wishes Were Horses.
Welcome into Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. I'm John Champion.
And I'm Ken Ray. Each week on Mission Log, we watch an episode of Star Trek, taking it apart for messages, morals, and meanings, and seeing whether the whole thing holds up today.
This week, If Wishes Were Horses. The one with no wishes and no horses. But it does have a baseball player and Rumplestiltskin, so he's got that going for it. I've got trivia coming up in a bit, but first,
a word from LinkedIn Jobs. Do you know how to hire the right person for a job? LinkedIn does, because LinkedIn is about work. Sure, you can post to a regular job board, but that'll only get you people looking for a job. LinkedIn is less about finding a job and more about improving abilities, growing a network, and yes, exploring job opportunities as well. It's like a social network with a business focus.
Maybe you know LinkedIn is a place to find a job. Doesn't it make sense then that it'd be a great place to find talent? Hundreds of thousands of businesses have posted to LinkedIn Jobs over the past year, and they should, since, get this now, 70% of the U.S. workforce is already on LinkedIn.
And LinkedIn is targeting qualified candidates, taking into account skills, experience, location, and more to find the right people for you. That's one reason businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs 40% higher than job boards at delivering qualified candidates.
22 million professionals view and apply to jobs on LinkedIn every week in every industry. That's every, let me repeat that, every industry. So let's get you set up with the next member of your team.
Go to linkedin.com/missionlog and get a $50 credit toward your first job post. That's linkedin.com/missionlog for your $50 credit today. Terms and conditions apply.
Get a $50 credit toward your first job post at linkedin.com/missionlog. And a big thanks to LinkedIn for sponsoring this week's show.
I don't know about you, John, but that makes me want to hire somebody.
Let's do it. Let's 2 or 3 while we're at it.
Yeah, get a guy. Get somebody on the phone. Mm-hmm. No. Don't get them on the phone. LinkedIn.com/missionlog. That's actually the thing, right? That's the whole point of what we just said. It would be silly of me to say, hey, call LinkedIn for me. John's got trivia coming up in a moment, but first I'm going to tell you how to get in touch with us. Mission Log Pod is the address to find us on Facebook, Skype, and Twitter. If you'd like to leave us a voicemail, we would love to hear your voice. 323-522-5641 is the phone number to call. 323-522-5641. Our email address is missionlog@roddenberry.com. Our show website, including discovered documents, is at missionlogpodcast.com. And please do remember, we may use your comments on an upcoming episode of Mission Log. And with that, we turn it over to the Trivia King for the Trivia Thing. It's John Champion, everybody.
That's good, Ken. By the way, every call that we get now is going to be, hey, you guys hiring? So, trivia for today's episode of Wishes Were Horses. The story is by Nell McHugh Crawford and William L. Crawford. Both were new to Star Trek at the time, and neither has written a Star Trek story since then, at least not a produced story anyway. This is Nell's only professional credit, and William had written the story for a film in 1991 called The Psychic. So it's probably no surprise then that the teleplay is credited to Nell and William Crawford and Michael Piller. The final version has a lot of Pillar's work in it. In fact, there was a major point that Pillar changed after a request from one of the actors. Originally, the crew would have been visited by a leprechaun. Colm Meaney objected, not wanting to dip into Irish stereotype. Oh, maybe just some uneasy feelings from up the long ladder. And that character was ultimately changed to Rumpelstiltskin. This episode was directed by Robert Legato. We've mentioned him just a little bit before. He's had a long history with Trek, but primarily from his background in visual effects. He worked on TNG's effects starting with Encounter at Farpoint, then flexed his directorial muscle with Ménage à Troyes and The Nth Degree. This is the last episode of Trek for which he will get a director's credit, but he was still humming along with VFX for a long, long time. Now, Rumpelstiltskin, who I mentioned before, of course, he's a fairy tale character popularized by the Brothers Grimm in the early 19th century, but the story about an imp who can spin straw into gold and basically blackmails a woman to giving up her child unless she can guess his name, that story goes all the way back to about 2000 BC. The name itself dates back to at least the middle 16th century. In German, it translates to Little Rattle Stilt, the stilt being a support pole. So Rumpelstiltskin is a guy who goes around shaking up the foundation of things. Buck Bokai, not a real guy either, but we've heard of him before. He got mentioned in The Storyteller just a couple of weeks ago, but if you go way back, he first became a Trek feature in The Big Goodbye, where it was mentioned that someone beat Joe DiMaggio's record. Buck wasn't named, but it was him. Gunji Jackdaw, I believe we have our first and only emu sighting in Star Trek. They are tasty and very healthy. And we get a really nice look at the model of the Daedalus class USS Horizon in this episode in Sisko's office. That model was built by Greg Jean, originally just because he was a fan of Matt Jeffries' original design and wanted to include it in Mike Okuda's Star Trek chronology book. Then they took a cast of that model and built the one you see in the show. And let's talk about guest stars. Rumpelstiltskin is played by Michael John Anderson. That should be a very familiar name to Twin Peaks fans. He is the man from Another Place, featured prominently in that series, as well as in the movie Fire Walk with Me. He shows up again in David Lynch's film Mulholland Drive. You've also seen him in the HBO series Carnival. Keon Young plays Buck Bokai. Born in Hawaii, Keon got his TV start in the early 70s and easily made the transition to film, too, with such titles like Dude, Where's My Car? And Men in Black 3. Recent TV work has him turning up in recurring roles on Deadwood, True Blood, and Alias, and he does a tremendous amount of voice work, notably in the G.I. Joe cartoon series, Star Wars Rebels, Hi Hi Puffy Amiyumi, Avatar The Last Airbender, and Archer, not the one with Brian Keith. This is the only time we will see Buck Bokai, but Keon will be back for one more Trek appearance on Enterprise.
Now batting for the mission loggers. Harmon, Ken, Ray.
Prologue. Odo and Quark are at it again. Quark is talking about the value of imagination, like he can make serious money off it. Odo sees the whole thing as a waste of time. He's not even convinced when Quark starts talking about wholesome entertainment. Why, look, there's young Jake Sisko off to knock a few baseballs in the holosuite with some of the greatest to ever play the game. Julian and Dax are at it again. The Doctor says he cannot concentrate, driven to distraction as he is by Dax. So Dax lists a number of females on which Julian seems to have no trouble concentrating. Leaving Julian to his frustration, Dax heads to Ops, where Kira and Commander Sisko are tracking a weird increase in Thoron emissions. Dax will give it a look. Miles and Keiko are at it again. Whoops, my bad. For once, they're not fighting. Miles is reading their daughter Molly a bedtime story. Rumpelstiltskin. Good night. Sweet dreams. But almost as soon as they leave her, Molly is out of bed telling her parents that Rumpelstiltskin is in her room. That's because he is. Act 1. Miles is reasonably freaked out. Rumplestiltskin is just chilling in Molly's room. With Keiko and Molly gone, Rumpelstiltskin goes to ransacking O'Brien's quarters while Miles calls for security. He really does seem to be Rumpelstiltskin, asking whether Miles wants gold spun from straw, hating the sound of his own name. Very Rumpelstiltskin-y. When security is physically unable to lay a hand on the being, O'Brien calls for Commander Sisko, but he doesn't get past his door when Jake brings in Harmon Buck Buckeye, a famous baseball player who's been dead for 200 years. He followed Jake home from the holosuite. In Dr. Bashir's quarters, wow, here's a turn of events. Dax is all over Julian. No, it's not a dream. There she is, ready to, play with Julian. Not surprisingly, her absolute willingness seems to make the Doctor a bit uncomfortable. She must be sick, or he must be sick. But neither one of them's sick. Why are you fighting this? Asked Dax. And yeah, come to think of it, why am I? Just when Julian is about to join playtime, a call for senior officers to report to Ops. Julian figures the whole thing was a setup, though Dax says it's not a joke. In Ops, Bashir and Dax are introduced to Buck Buckeye, Rumpelstiltskin, and Jadzia Dax. Yeah, it turns out the one who showed up in Julian's quarters isn't the real Dax. I mean, she's real, but she's not the real Dax. Act 2. Sisko's breaking the news to Buck Buckeye about his not being real. I mean, he is real, but he's not the real Buck Buckeye. Sisko tells the ball player that he's a holographic recreation, even if he does remember everything the real Buckeye would remember. This can't be a hologram malfunction, though, since Rumpelstiltskin and the libidinous Dax weren't holosuite creations. Rather, each came from someone's imagination. Rumpelstiltskin from Molly's, the Dax-alike from Julian's, and Buckeye from Jake's. How could this be? A subspace disruption? Some kind of dimensional shift? An undigested bit of beef? A blot of mustard? A crumb of cheese? Dax will look deeper into the plasma field where the strange Thoron emissions showed up earlier. Libidinous Dax is bored. She wants to go to Julian's quarters. With Julian. But when he says he has no time for this, she disappears. That's a surprise, and here's another. Odo says it is snowing on the promenade. Real Dax has found something, some sort of spatial anomaly in the plasma field, a subspace disruption, just like she said earlier. And it comes with bad news. Whatever falls into it is just gone. And it's getting bigger. Back on the promenade, everyone's imagination seems to be running wild. Quark's got a woman on each arm, which pleases him greatly, though that joy is cut short when Odo points out that all of Quark's customers are winning. Turns out they have imaginations too. Real Dax and Bashir are working on the issue of the anomaly. Bashir also wants to apologize for the other Dax, though Dax says not to worry about it. She almost feels like everybody owes him an apology. Private fantasies are fine as far as she's concerned. His have just been exposed. Speaking of which, libidinous Dax has come in, trying to get next to Bashir, calling real Dax a cold fish, telling her to give in to her yearnings, or she'll never know what she missed. This argument interrupted by the computer. It's found an issue similar to the one facing DS9 now. No reason anyone should have heard of it, though. When the rupture faced by the Hanoli system expanded, the Hanoli system was destroyed. Act 3. DS9 has sent a probe into the anomaly. While we wait for that, Rumpelstiltskin taunts Miles O'Brien. You're afraid of me because I could take your daughter. Then he disappears. Ah well, probes the anomaly anyway. Bad news there, the distortion is getting larger and drawing in all surrounding matter. On his way back to Ops, Sisko has a chat with Buck Buckeye about how he's not real, about baseball, about how everyone's busyness killed that game. Anyway, Buck wants Ben to know how much he appreciates his caring. It really means a lot to him. Or meant. Suddenly, there are the three figments. Rumplestiltskin, Bakai, and the libidinous Dax. Rumplestiltskin says he's not getting anywhere with his. Why would he conjure up something that could terrify him? Dax wonders why Julian would conjure a woman only to reject her. But Buck says he's made a connection with his. He senses feelings from Ben. He says they should continue with what they're doing for as long as it takes. Act 4. The rift is expanding. As a precaution, DS9 has diverted all incoming traffic away. O'Brien and Dax have studied up on the Hanoli rift. Vulcans there tried to stop it by detonating a pulse wave torpedo near that rift. 5 minutes after they did, the rupture expanded dramatically, and they were wiped out, along with the entire Hanoli system. So, O'Brien has a plan. They'll try detonating a pulse wave torpedo near the rift. The Hanoli incident was 200 years ago. Pulse wave torpedo technology has improved a whole lot since then. Kira's against the idea. If they failed, they could destroy DS9 and the entire Bajoran system. But here's the thing. They can either try to stop it the best way they know how, or wait for the rift to consume them and the Bajoran system. They'll try the torpedoes. That'll take a few hours. While we're waiting for that, we dip into the imaginations of Kira, Jake, and Odo. Not surprisingly, Kira imagines disaster at every turn. Jake imagines going to play baseball in the Hollow Suite, but he's got homework to do. Odo, meanwhile, imagines having Quark locked up in the brig. Imagining is fun. Back in Ops, the rate of rift expansion is getting worse. Act 5. Time to shoot the anomaly. And that did not work. The anomaly is expanding, and everyone is about to die. Starting with libidinous Dax. A blow to the head takes her out, though she and Julian make a sort of emotional connection before she passes out. Rumpelstiltskin, meanwhile, says he can make all of this stop if Miles will meet his price, his daughter, for all of their lives. It seems an impossible choice, but the station is coming apart around them, and wow, imagine if all of this wasn't happening. And that's it. Cisco realizes that all of it, Rumpelstiltskin, libidinous Dax, Buck Bakai, the snow on the promenade, all of it came from their imaginations. What if the rift did too? In fact, it did, right? Dax thought there might be an anomaly in the Thoron energy, something she'd missed before. Once she imagined it and went looking for it, there it was. Cisco has new orders for O'Brien. Cancel Red Alert, drop shields, and probably the most important part, believe that we won't be consumed by the rift. Because it's not there. If you believe it. Seriously. That part is really important. It works. As long as they believe it. Kira's readings are normal once she gets it they're supposed to be. So are the readings coming into real Dax. In no time, the 3 figments are gone. And so is the anomaly. The only thing that hasn't returned to normal are those pesky Thoron emissions, but they'll keep an eye on those for somewhere between 25 and 27 hours. A critical, though non-speculative eye. In his office, Cisco bumps into Buck Bakai. No, he's not just a figment of Ben's imagination. He's an explorer. He and his don't really get this whole imagination thing. It's real, but it's not. Benjamin asks Buck for information about his species, but, oh, I'm sorry, our time is up. Maybe next year. The end.
Imagination.
I don't know what you're doing.
You don't? Come on.
You're creeping me out. But
come on. South Park, Imagination Land, Imagination.
Seriously?
It's like a 2.5 minute moment. They did a whole parody about Journey into Imagination at Epcot,
okay.
where that song will stick with you. But in the South Park episode, it's just the guy, and he's got his whimsical steampunk kind of dirigible thing. He's got the kids, but his song is just that for like just on and on and on and on.
Now, was that the one with the magic locket?
I think that is a different episode. But yeah,
because for some reason I just now want to sing Magic Locket. I don't know why, but I do.
I don't know. That is a funny bit with Quark ruminating on expanding into family entertainment and how it could coexist with his adult entertainment. I'm thinking of Vegas, of course, because it worked there until it didn't.
Well, now hold on, because so you're talking about for Star Trek, it worked there until it didn't.
No, I mean the whole Vegas marketing campaign toward families.
You think so?
Yeah.
You think it didn't really? Because
it worked. It worked for a few years.
Right. Excalibur had its day. Circus had its day. New York. I don't think they still run the roller coaster, though, do they?
Well, see, case in point, all the roller coasters got either stopped or stripped out, or they run occasionally.
I was telling a friend of mine recently how Treasure Island used to sink a pirate ship like once an hour.
And that was so cool.
It was the coolest thing, right? And people who don't know. But it was incredible because you'd just be walking down and they would like sail one ship around the building in pursuit of another ship. And they were all like ship sized. And then they would sink a ship. And then you come back 2 hours later, they're doing it again.
Yeah. But that was the big push, and then that lasted a few years, and then they're like, no, new marketing campaign. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Definitely not aimed at kids.
Probably not so much. Although kids were probably glad to hear that.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Bad kids. I'm sorry, bad kids were.
So Odo has no sense of smell. We learned in this, which I found to be very interesting, since he can shapeshift into a being with all kinds of organs like eyes and ears, and presumably uses those organs for their intended purposes. I wonder if this is just a limitation of his species, that they don't have a sense of smell. Therefore, it's not like they have sight somehow, so you can replicate an organ that acts as an eye,
It does answer my question from a few weeks ago, though, about how can he bear to sit down on anything? Right. Because I assume that, smell and taste are so closely related with us that if we didn't have one, we might not have the other. Or at least, I know that if you can't smell, then your sense of taste is definitely thrown out of whack.
Yeah.
So maybe sitting on a bar stool that hasn't been washed in, decades, wouldn't be as offensive to him as it might be for me if my entire body were also a giant tongue.
Yes. Speaking of Odo, I really am liking the Odo and Jake relationship. He refers to Jake, young Mr. Sisko, and it's parental, and it softens Odo. Because from the very beginning, if all he was going to be is just the constable, and that character had a very hard moral line, and talked about how easy justice was under the Cardassians, that would get old fast. But I think they picked the right way to soften him up. You see him being very protective of Jake, especially over the last few episodes. Another nice Odo moment is, ladies and gentlemen, and then Morn walks by, and all androgynous creatures. Funny bit for Odo, revealing bit for Morn.
Yes, goes back to the thing you had last week.
Which question was that?
Morn, well, it wasn't a question you had, but Morn asks out Dax, and you're like, what if it's Julian and O'Brien later? And it's like, hey, so guess who asked me out for dinner?
Right.
Morn.
Exactly.
You never know. You never do.
And then, and of course, Odo is the one who says, please refrain from using your imagination, as if that has ever worked anytime, anywhere. I love that.
There was something about the whole imagination thing that kind of reminded me of the ravenous bug bladder beast of Trill and the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I don't know if you remember that. Do you remember that?
Not specifically, no.
Okay. Well, I looked it up, actually. The guide calls the bug bladder the stupidest creature in the entire universe, so profoundly unintelligent that if you can't see it, it assumes it can't see you.
Okay.
There's something about that, it's like the lack of imagination thing, and how it's like, okay, everybody just don't imagine anything.
Yeah.
I mean, it turns out that is actually the way they save that is the way they save Deep Space Nine. But for Odo to hit on that so quickly, just like, okay, everybody just stop imagining anything. Yeah. And we'll be fine. Except, of course, you can't, can you?
Right. But that's funny, that the description of the bug bladder, for some reason I remember the description, but not that name, because who remembers the bug bladder beast of Trill, except for you, Ken.
Doesn't. Well, I was going to say, what's funny to me is, so people don't know this, but we spent easily 10 minutes looking up an episode, right?
Yes.
Of Star Trek before we went on. Yeah, of Next Gen, because we had to know the name of this one episode. I can tell you all about the Great Green Arkle Seizure. I can tell you all about the Ravenous Bug Bladder Beast of Trill. Some things just stick, John. Some things just stick.
I know that has been the curse of my life. But to your point about Odo and the imagination thing, it's sort of like if you told me right now, don't think about food. I'm sorry, but for the rest of the show, I'm going to be thinking about food.
That's ridiculous, though, because whether anybody mentioned food, that was going to happen.
That's very true. Very, very true. Hey, here's a question for you. Does Odo's fantasy put the real Quark in jail, or is that just what Odo imagines on the monitor? Because, you think about it, Bashir imagines libidinous Dax,
right?
But libidinous Dax is a different person. That is a different manifestation from the aliens,
right?
And you still have the real Dax hanging out elsewhere. I'm just saying, we don't see Quark again for the rest of the episode after Odo imagines him in jail.
But we did see the Quark in jail disappear after Odo was satisfied with his imagining. They pulled that little winking out of existence thing the way the three Figments did. Yeah, there's a lot about the imaginings that I don't get. Who was imagining the emu? Was that him imagining that? Was he sitting around going, man, this place, it would really make my job difficult? I was chasing big flightless birds around. What if I was doing that right after a snowstorm? That would be... Well, hold on a second.
Can't tell you how many times I've walked into a building and said to myself, this place needs an emu.
Yeah.
Buck Pakai has this line to Jake. He says, Jake says, "Oh, my dad would kill me if I, skipped out on homework and just went to play ball." And the alien, Buck Pakai, asks him, "You really think your dad would kill you?" And there's some sincerity behind that. And I'm thinking, well, what if this is another test here for the aliens? Like, the aliens are learning so much about the humans and the other beings on board Deep Space Nine, and they're like, yeah, well, they do this thing where they imagine stuff, and this one guy runs a bar, but he doesn't care about the bar once he has a couple of women hanging on his shoulders. But a weird thing, the parents will threaten to kill their children if they don't do homework. Just tuck that away in the footnotes and our encounters with human beings.
It would have been it would have been a much darker episode, because Buck Pakai says, "Do you really think your dad would kill you?" And Jake says, "I know he would."
Yeah.
But then he imagines a very docile Ben sitting there going, "You really should do your homework." Would have been really interesting if, we had seen Commander Sisko in a hockey mask with a chainsaw standing over him, going, "Did you finish all of your homework?" Because that's, and then you're right, the aliens would definitely have a different idea of how things might go. There was one thing that I honestly wondered if we caught a blooper on screen, or if it was a line. When everything's going nuts in ops, Kira says, "Perimeter sensors are picking up a subspace oscillation." What the hell does that mean? And I thought, that could either be her trying to figure out what that means, or the actress going, what's my motivation? Because I don't even know what I'm talking about.
Well, Ken, if we learned anything last week, it's that if it was important, they'd tell you.
It is Dax and Dax, as you have never seen her before, fighting over whether they should be fighting over Dr. Bashir.
We'll go deeper into this week's episode in a moment, but first,
we interrupt this podcast to tell you about another podcast. If I said to you, Mission Log Live, would you know what I meant? See, John Champion of Mission Log.
That's me. Wait, no, I'm sorry. That's you.
Yeah. See, and Ken Ray of Mission Log.
That's you. Wait.
Here's what we do. We get together every Tuesday night to do a live show. When Star Trek Discovery is on, we talk about Discovery. When Discovery is not on, we talk about just all kinds of stuff, getting science into politics, getting politics out of science, the philosophy of Star Trek, and World's fairs and food, probably.
Toys.
We
talk about toys.
Oh, man, do we ever talk about toys?
We talk about all those things with all kinds of people like Doug Drexler, Dayton Ward, Chase Masterson, Rod Roddenberry. The guests just keep on coming. Sometimes there are no guests. Sometimes it's just me and me? No, me and John.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, me and John and you just talking about all kinds of stuff. See, that's why we do it live. We want your calls. So join us every Tuesday night at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific on Facebook. Actually, on our Facebook page, facebook.com/missionlogpod. Or you can download the show later. Just search for Mission Log Live wherever you go for podcasts.
Wait, I have a better idea. Do both. Subscribe to Mission Log Live wherever you get podcasts. And join us live every Tuesday night, again at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific, at facebook.com/missionlogpod for Mission Log Live.
Mission Log Live, a proud member of the Roddenberry Podcast Network.
Extraordinarily proud.
Extraordinary. We're stupid proud. We are stupid proud to be a part of that chain of shows there. Which
waving banners and tapestries like nobody's business.
Like nobody's business. What? Mm-hmm. All right. So, no imagination, huh? Says Quark. Odo says, waste of time. Too many people dream of places they'll never go, wish for things they'll never have, instead of paying adequate attention to their real lives. Mm-hmm. Kind of a bummer.
You're trying to tell me something?
No, it's just a bummer.
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, every now and then we go back to, what was it, the second episode of Deep Space Nine? Second or third episode of Deep Space Nine, where Keiko and Miles are fighting. I'm sorry, the second, third, fourth, fifth episode of Deep. Good to see them not fighting in this episode.
Sure, yeah, I give you that.
Yeah. Where Miles and Keiko are fighting, and Quark says they don't want to be here. And Odo says, or she doesn't want to be here, and Odo says, who does? I mean, he's just a miserable character. And in this episode, he is also a miserable character, except it turns out you peek behind the veil a bit, and he does have, a rich imagination. He does have a fantasy life. Sadly, it is still very much Law and Order, with just a taste of, I don't know, vengeance.
Yeah, I was supposed to say revenge. Yeah,
yeah. Except not really revenge, because Quark hasn't really done anything to him. But yeah. I mean, a bit of I don't even know what that is. But yeah, he's got imagination. You just don't want to be on the wrong side of it.
Yeah, a little bit of sadism, maybe.
Sadism, sure. Okay,
no, seriously.
No, I know.
He just likes to see Quark in jail. Yeah,
but just Quark. I mean, he likes Law and Order, and then he likes to bug Quark.
So let's talk about the Bashir thing a little bit, because we've talked about Bashir a little bit on our show and some of Bashir's behaviors in DS9. I don't know that I can fault Bashir for what's going on with libidinous Dax, except I can fault him for the opening bit. So let's get to that part in just a second. I like that there's a moment in this episode that says that Bashir is entitled to his fantasies. And it was really necessary for him to have that conversation with Dax. I'm glad that they wrote that scene for them together. She acknowledges that he's okay. If anything, it's a violation of his mind to have everything on display in front of everyone else. I mean, thank goodness that's only as far as it went with Bashir. Before
we go on, though, to the opening part where he's, professing, quote, love, end quote, or distraction or whatever, is that scene between Julian and Dax undone at all by libidinous Dax coming in and calling her names? And, I mean, it goes really quickly from an adult, interesting conversation to name calling and, a very sort of 1950s, 1960s sitcom trope, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, so it's a funny bit that libidinous Dax says, "I'm not submissive, am I?" I mean,
that's cute. Yeah.
That was written perfectly. It was written absolutely perfectly and delivered very well.
I'm thinking specifically, though, of the cold fish thing. Like, she comes in and says, "Don't be such a cold fish." And then 300-year-old, perfectly, in tune with everything Dax says cold fish, and it goes from being an adult conversation to being a relatively stereotypical conversation. I don't know that it undoes the good part, but it was just sort of depressing or kind of a downer to see it go so quickly into, I mean, in fairness, what the whole thing could have been. So
yeah. I don't think it hurts it terribly, but it's sort of like watching Saturday Night Live and you realize that they've gotten to the end of the scene and forgot to write the end of the scene.
Right. You realize they've gotten to the end of the scene. They haven't yet.
Right. But all in all, good moments for Bashir and Dax. But let's talk about that opening. Come on, Julian, stop. Because you've been asked to stop. It has been made clear that this is not going to be a thing. You know it's not going anywhere. It's not funny or cute. I want to say to the guy, look, you get to say your piece once, and you did, and then move on, and then stop. This is becoming harassment at this point.
Oh, it's been that, hasn't it? But,
yeah.
But here's the thing, and this is not justification by any stretch of the imagination. I did think it was kind of interesting, though, that he finally gets what he wants, and he's like, nah. You know what I mean? Not like he wants to get away from her, but he was freaked out by it. And yeah. I mean, and maybe you could say, well, it's because it's such a radical departure. You could also say that he's just sort of, well, this speaks actually volumes. I mean, she lists all the women that he was very interested in, not distracted at all when they were around. He may be a guy who just enjoys, and this is terrible, and I'm not saying it's good, but we may be learning this about his character. He may just enjoy the conquest. He may just enjoy the hunt. He may just enjoy what I always thought Riker was, because I sort of watched Riker very casually before we had to study him. I actually, despite conversations that you and I have had recently with other people, I have a bit more respect for Riker than I did when we first started watching TNG. So far, there's just not a lot to like about the way Julian deals with women or treats women. It works, apparently, because he talks about that. And Dax was listing off a bunch of people that he seems to have had playtime with them relatively recently.
You mean they're making green memories?
They may be making green memories. That is quite possible. That's quite possible. I don't know. I mean, all that sort of sounds like justification, and it's really not. It's more just, trying to figure out his character.
There was one thing that stuck out to me. How do we feel about baseball being dead by the 24th century? Because I was trying to think of an analog. There aren't many sports today that don't have some kind of audience.
Well, but we used to have jousting tournaments, didn't we?
Well, yeah, but I mean, that's true.
I mean, we kind of quit with that at some point. People get really excited about fencing around the Olympics. And I know, and let me back up really quickly. I'm going to offend a bunch of people, and I'm sorry about that. Speaking as a guy who recently made jokes about soccer on another podcast.
Oh, great.
I don't want to say anything about baseball or fencing or curling or any of those things. I mean, it's quite possible. I'm going to let you say whatever you want to about the sports, John. Go ahead.
Wow. That's the shrinking violet here.
Well, I mean, when you say you're trying to think of an analog, I don't know. I mean, highlight was always going to be a huge thing one day. And I feel certain for some people, highlight actually did become a huge thing. I remember when the New England Revolution came to Boston, when they came to the Boston area as part of the expansion of Major League Soccer, as part of the beginning of Major League Soccer. And I couldn't care less, and I still can't. And baseball, I'm the same way. So, I mean, we may just be the wrong people to talk about this, honestly, unless you've been hiding some, sports fanatic side of yourself about which you haven't told me.
Man, then I hide it extraordinarily well. No, but you mentioned fencing, and that's the thing that isn't on people's radar. But sure, the Olympics roll around, and the Olympics has a tremendous TV audience and a tremendous in-person audience as well. Mm-hmm. So there are actually people who will watch any number, curling or whatever that just shows up on the Olympics, and you go, oh yeah, people do play that, even if it's not something that's sort of on your radar all the time. But the way they describe baseball in this show, though, was kind of interesting. And I think it's a very smart thing to do from a writer's standpoint, because you give Cisco and his relationship with Jake, you give that some texture, some life, some color, just because, yeah, it's a thing that they're into, that a 20th century audience watching this show for the first time could get, that kind of grounds them. But then you also remove it a bit by saying, well, in the future, it's not quite the same thing as you know now. There isn't a massive TV audience for a World Series because there is no more World Series after a certain point. Personally, I'm okay with it. I'm okay. I like the idea that you can maintain an understanding of something through the study of history, and in their case, a holodeck, which is kind of cool. They can actually walk into a baseball game and practice playing this thing that nobody really plays anymore just because they can. But I did wonder, because I think it was on another podcast I was listening to not long ago, talking about the idea that, let's say in 100 years, football just might not be a thing. Mm-hmm. that people play. And you and I both growing up in the South, it's not an overstatement when you hear people say this, well, football's a religion in the South. Yeah, football is an almost all-consuming thing for a lot of people in the South. So you float out this idea that football just might not be a thing, and there might be good reasons for it to not be a thing. I look at that and I go, yeah, okay, I get it. I get why it might not be. And the idea then that this is another thing that Star Trek says, here's a difference between the future that we posit, and now, I'm kind of okay with that.
Send your email to John.
With the ball player, the mythical figure, and half the station's complement of decks gone away, it is time to see what we can take from If Wishes Were Horses.
The title can, If Wishes Were Horses, but that's only half the phrase. Would you be surprised if I told you the rest of it goes something like this? If wishes were horses, beggars would ride.
Oh.
That from a 17th century English proverb. Originated in Scotland. It's an English language proverb, I should specify. And the intention being this: if all you had to do was wish for something, great, we'd all be fine. But you actually have to go out and make things happen. You can't just wish for it.
I will tell you, I would not be surprised to hear that, because the whole time that we were preparing for this show, I was thinking of a different phrase.
Okay.
If ifs and buts were candy and nuts, we'd have Christmas all year round.
Wow.
Yeah. There was some relative of mine used to say that. A big fan of that relative, by the way. Huge. Because, when somebody's guiding you through growing up, that's really the kind of thing you want to hear. I was honestly surprised, though, that you didn't mention in trivia that was the original title of this episode.
I should have.
You should have, yeah.
Should have.
But it was a little long, for TV Guide, which was a thing back in 90-something. Ask your dad. And also, what's Christmas?
Right.
So,
right. Yeah. Let us also not forget the Joss Whedon show, Firefly.
How could we?
Science fiction show that ran for only 17 episodes.
Yes.
But it was Jane from that show who said, if wishes were horses, we'd all be eating steak. Mm-hmm. Yeah, think about that one for a minute.
Yeah, man, they called Jane. Really quite something. Actually, I thought of Jane as we were preparing for this episode as well. Because, okay, so when Quark's imagination runs away with him, he gets a couple of showgirls on his arm, right? Well, one on each arm, and it's not like a tattoo. I mean, he's walking around, basically, he's promenading around the promenade with a couple of showgirls, right? And that's what he does. He walks around with them the whole time. And I honestly thought of Jane. I'll be in my bunk. That's what I thought, honestly.
Perfect.
It seemed to me, it was a very odd thing for him to just like, oh, wow, I got these two, beautiful women. I can't imagine what I would do with them except walk around and let everybody see I've got these two beautiful women.
Because he's like Dr. McCoy from Shore Leave.
Oh, that's right.
With the Showgirls.
That's right. Yeah. He is, yes.
Just like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, an episode that has a little bit of resemblance to this episode.
Shore Leave, you're saying?
Yeah, but there are other episodes of Star Trek that might have some resemblance here. So I guess we've reached that point then where we figure out what the morals, meanings, messages, maybe a little crossover of some of those episodes, and whether or not this one holds up as well or maybe worse than some of those other episodes. So what do you say we do that part first?
You go ahead.
Okay. Well, so this episode answers the question from Michael Piller, how do you do a holodeck story without doing a holodeck story? That was the whole point, is that he had come off of Next Gen, obviously, and a lot of holodeck stories there. You got your Moriarty running wild. You got Wesley throwing a snowball from inside the holodeck, and it comes out and hits Picard in the face. You got your... You got your Orient Express, you got your Big Goodbye, you got all kinds of stuff in that holodeck. Mm-hmm. So what you do here is kind of the same thing you did in Where No One Has Gone Before. Instead of it being the holodeck, you introduce an alien influence, in that case, the Traveler. In this case, we have our aliens, who we know nothing about at the end of the episode, except that they're explorers as well. And then our imaginations just manifest themselves from the characters. So that's what you end up with here. To me, this episode is completely and utterly middle of the road fine. I do not find myself having strong feelings one way or the other about this episode. Total take it or leave it for me. It is a well-produced episode for what it is. We should not expect an episode of Star Trek at this point to not be well-produced. We have talented writers. We have talented actors. We have a great effects team. Clearly, there was a lot of budget thrown to DS9. But what we have in a story is just something where whimsical and weird things happen, so they have to figure out why and make it stop. And that's it. I mean, that is it as far as the story goes. I like that Rumpelstiltskin here isn't silly. Michael J. Anderson plays him kind of weird and creepy. The Dax storyline has interesting moments to talk about, which we did. I really like Buck Buckeye. Mm-hmm. I don't know why, because I feel like Hyun Young almost underplays it too much. But there's something about that performance that I really dig, that he's so just sort of grounded as the fish out of water here, that there's something sort of charming and interesting about that portrayal. We mentioned Shore Leave. We mentioned Where No One Has Gone Before. We mentioned all the holodeck episodes, or at least a few of them. This feels like it's treading familiar ground. Mm-hmm. I don't hate it. I don't hate it for that. I don't count against it for that. Because I think there are okay things in this episode, but because it's familiar ground, it doesn't stand out to me. So I can't really say that I give it a pass, but at the same time, I can't say that I hate it. How about you?
I think I hate it.
Okay.
I think I do, honestly. Okay. Now, here's the thing. If I were just watching it, like one afternoon after work, I come home, flip on the TV, and there's this episode, I wouldn't hate it. I could pass 48 minutes, I suppose, with this, although with commercials, it'd feel like an hour and a half. I don't know. I mean, I think it's bad. I really don't like it at all. I mean, hate is such a strong word, although I think in my notes I do actually have hate down there.
Oh, there it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hate.
Okay. So I think the storyteller did a better job talking about the power of imagination.
By far.
Yeah. Okay. And that was like 3 weeks ago, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. I feel like the writing is a bit convoluted because I don't know who's doing what. Like who is it that, made it snow on the promenade, and who is it that made the emu happen on the promenade? I think Cisco said at one point half the inhabitants of DS9 had reported some manifestation of their imagination turning up, right? Well, first of all, how do you know? But then additionally, like, are they sticking with one person or are they jumping from person to person? Because Molly made Rumplestiltskin, right? But Rumplestiltskin attaches to Miles. And Jake made Buck Bakai, and yet Bakai attaches to Benjamin.
Yeah.
And so the writing doesn't really work for me, but you can't even say it's like, oh, well, it's just crazy imagination stuff, because they tried to introduce some sort of system how the whole thing would work, except it still doesn't, right? As far as the aliens coming in and not letting you know what their secret plan is, but really messing with your life, the TNG episode, the one that we had to look for a very long time to find the name of, Liaisons, actually did a slightly better job of aliens learning about things they don't understand, because at least the way they were trying to do it makes sense, right? Like the one that was originally supposed to be assigned in Liaisons, the one that was supposed to be assigned to Riker ends up wanting to be assigned to Worf because, and he's mean to Worf and whatever. And it's because he wants to learn about anger. And the one who's assigned to Troy is there because he wants to learn about pleasure. But of course, the one who is assigned to Troy, all he's really learning about is, Epicurean pleasure, like, just the joy of eating, not even the joy of cooking, just the joy of eating, and never mind sex, and never mind music, and never mind art. And yet he walks away thinking, well, now I know about pleasure. Thank you very much. And the one who was assigned to Riker originally, who went off to the Klingon, went off to Worf. He wanted to learn about anger, but all he's really learned about is pissing off a Klingon.
Right.
Which you can do just by talking to a Klingon. So he hasn't even really learned anything there. And yet I feel like that was a slightly better job of learning about people when you don't understand something, because these guys are like, I don't really get imagination, but I'm going to play with yours. You know what I mean? It's just, and then trying to be all cute about the whole thing. Like Benjamin was like, you could have talked to us instead of throwing us into peril. And Bakai's like, oh, no, you did that. Well, no, actually.
Let's reassess here.
So, had we had like some sort of, like, if we had done a little bit more with Bakai and found out like what, Ben's deal is with baseball, or what Jake's deal is with baseball, or why that. And baseball's not my thing. We talked about it last segment. There are very few sports that would speak to me in that way at all. But if we had done like that kind of character, digging into characters, for Benjamin, or digging into, or, any one of them, if we had actually done any kind of, they didn't even come to the answer. Rumpelstiltskin sits there and says, why would he conjure something that would terrify him? Okay, that is a great question. That is a fantastic question. See also Kira. She goes downstairs to evacuate something, and she thinks the thing explodes. Okay, well, so why isn't the fire sitting around that table with them going, yeah, and what's up with that girl, huh? It just, the logic of the whole thing doesn't make any sense to me. Now, here is how I could have ended up liking this episode, I think, or at least liking it a tiny bit more. If instead of being aliens that we're likely never going to see again, this had been the prophets. That would have been cool to me for a couple of reasons. First of all, we sort of introduced the idea of the prophets, and we've heard nothing again. Now, I know we have like 6 more seasons and change left, and we're only on episode like 13 or 14. But we do know that there are these, pan-galactic beings about 50 yards off DS9, and yet we've heard nothing or seen nothing of them. And also it would have made Deep Space Nine sort of a creepier, maybe more perilous place in a way, right? To know that is always right there and could really mess with us at any time. So, that might have done it for me. Even so, though, I still would have been like, okay, but explain this logic to me and why. So, yeah, I don't know. Like I said a minute ago, as far as messages, there's sort of a thing about the power of imagination here, except I feel like the storyteller did it better. Are there other messages, sir, that I'm just too full of hate to have noticed myself?
Well, see, that's just it. It's that, to me, this episode doesn't really know if it's making a statement about imagination or not. It sort of says fantasies are great. They're important. Don't let them get out of hand to the point of distorting reality, but still they're pretty great. Unless they're bad, you know.
Right.
There is something in here for Dax. The message to her, even if you want to find an answer so badly, and you want the answer to be true, you still can't assume that you're right. So you have to check and double check. But here's the thing: she does. So it's kind of hard to fault her entirely. Right. You know, she's actually really good about not just jumping to conclusions. So, the odds were kind of stacked against her at that point. I will say that if you wanted to sort of paint a bigger picture of a message, you could say something along the lines of, sometimes our problems are bigger only because we imagine them to be that way. So we sort of let our anxiety about a problem get ahead of us, and that distorts our ability to actually deal with a problem in a realistic way. So maybe I'll give them that.
Yeah, except there are two things that I'll look to on that. One, I'll take us back to the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. As cute as it was in, I can't remember if it was Life, the Universe, and Everything. I think it was Life, the Universe, and Everything. Arthur Dent understands that the way to fly is to throw yourself at the ground and miss.
Right, yes.
Okay, cute and funny, probably not physically true. I'm thinking about, also there's all this instrumentation all over Deep Space Nine, right? Like if I imagine I'm late and I check my watch and it turns out I am late, it wasn't my imagining that I was late that made me late. And I've got readings to prove it. So, I mean, you can say sometimes our problem are bigger only because we imagine them to be that way, except if you then check the thing that says there's oscillation on the periphery or whatever it was that Kira didn't know what it meant. And it actually says that. I mean, you know, yes, check and check again and check a third time. By that third time, though, generally speaking, it turns out you were right. Unless you're checking an altimeter or an oscillation thing.
Don't ever oscillate the ocelot.
Oh, that's a Smith song, isn't it?
It was. Mission Log is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment. Executive producer Rod Roddenberry. You can find so many great podcasts at podcast.roddenberry.com. You got your Mission Log, which you're listening to now. You got Mission Log Live, which you should definitely subscribe to. And while you're at it, subscribe to Women at Warp, Priority One, The Trek Files, and check back often for more of what's to come. If you'd like to support Mission Log directly, you can do so at patreon.com/missionlog. And for more exciting Star Trek podcasts, check out Trek FM, that's trek.fm. And for the latest in Star Trek news and discussion, be sure to visit trekmovie.com.
Next week, The Forsaken.
Some of the music for Mission Log provided by Warp 11, online at warp11.com, and from the album Messages by Key Theory, free to download at kitheory.com. Can you imagine if we did this again next week? I guess we will find out if you could. Next week. End transmission.
Podcast.roddenberry.com, the Roddenberry Podcast Network.